If God created the universe, then who created God? And if God has no creator, then how is that possible? Think about it. Everything we know has a cause. A tree grows from a seed. A star is born from collapsing gas. Even the Big Bang, the event that created all space and time, must have had something that triggered it, right? So if the universe needed a cause, wouldn't God need one too? Here's where it gets weird. Religious traditions say God is uncreated, eternal, beyond time itself. But science tells us nothing in the universe just exists without a cause. So how can one thing, the most powerful, complex, and intelligent force in existence, be an exception? How can something exist with no beginning? That's the paradox. And for thousands of years, humans have tried to solve it. Some say God must have been created by an even greater force. But then we have to ask, who created that force? And who created that? This creates an infinite loop, a never-ending chain of causes with no starting point. And that's a problem. Because if nothing ever started, then how does anything exist at all? This is what philosophers call infinite regression. Imagine a line of dominoes stretching forever. Each domino falls because another one knocked it over. But what if there was no first domino? What if they've been falling forever? That doesn't make sense. Something had to start it all. But then, if there was a first domino, what made it fall? See the problem? No matter which way we look at it, we run into a dead end. Either something has always existed, or something appeared out of nowhere. Neither answer makes sense, yet one of them must be true. Some scientists argue that the universe could have created itself, that quantum mechanics allows something to appear from nothing, that maybe, just maybe, the laws of physics alone were enough to bring everything into existence. No creator needed. But there's a flaw in that idea. Where did the laws of physics come from? Why do they even exist? If the universe created itself, what set the rules for it to happen? Others believe the only answer is God, a being so fundamental, so beyond time and space, that the question, who created God, doesn't even apply. That God is the uncaused cause, the ultimate source of everything, needing no explanation. But that raises an even bigger question. Why does God get to be the exception? Why not the universe itself? What if the cosmos has existed forever? What if there was no beginning, just an endless cycle of existence? So what's the truth? Is God real? Is the universe eternal? Or is reality something we can't even comprehend? The answer will be enough to think deeply about life. Keep tuned with me. For as long as humans have looked up at the stars, we've been asking the same question. Where did all of this come from? Ancient civilizations built temples, pyramids, and monuments, trying to connect with something greater, something beyond themselves. They worshipped gods they believed had created the world, the heavens, and everything in between. But as time passed, our search for answers expanded beyond temples and myths. We built telescopes, launched satellites, and explored the cosmos, looking for truth among the stars. And yet, for all our progress, for all our discoveries in science, philosophy, and religion, we still haven't answered the biggest question of them all. Where did everything begin? We live in a universe of causes and effects. Everything we see, from the rise of civilizations to the explosion of distant supernovae, follows a chain of events. A seed becomes a tree because it was planted in the soil. A river carves through mountains because of millions of years of erosion. A planet forms because dust and gas collapse under gravity. Every event has something that caused it to happen. So, what about the biggest event of them all? The birth of the universe? Modern science tells us that everything, the stars, the galaxies, even space and time itself, began 14 billion years ago in a moment we call the Big Bang. Before that, there was nothing, no matter, no energy, no time. And then, in an instant, the universe erupted into existence. But that explanation creates a problem. If everything has a cause, then what caused the Big Bang? Some say physics itself provides the answer, that the laws of quantum mechanics allow something to come from nothing, that maybe, just maybe, the universe didn't need a creator at all. Others argue that's impossible, that the universe couldn't just appear on its own, that something or someone must have caused it to happen. And for thousands of years, many have believed that something is God. But if God created the universe, then who created God? It's a paradox that has haunted thinkers, philosophers, and scientists for centuries. Some believe God is eternal, that he has always existed and needs no creator. Others argue that's just an excuse, because if we say God can exist without a cause, then why not the universe itself? And this leads us to one of the greatest debates of all time. Does everything truly need a beginning, or is there something in existence that simply always was? Many of the greatest minds in history have tried to answer this. Ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle spoke of the unmoved mover, a force that started everything but was itself never started. Religious traditions across the world describe God as eternal, beyond time, beyond human understanding. Meanwhile, modern physicists like Stephen Hawking proposed theories that challenge the very idea of a beginning at all. But here's the real question. If we could somehow trace the origin of everything, the universe, time, space, even reality itself, back to one final answer, what would we find? Would we find a creator, a divine being who designed the universe with purpose and intent? Would we find a mindless natural process, an infinite loop of cosmic events, repeating forever without need for a god? Or would we discover something else entirely, something so far beyond our understanding that even asking, who created God, is the wrong question? In the end, this mystery is more than just a debate between science and religion. It's the ultimate question of existence. Because if we answer it, if we discover where everything began, then we might just discover what it all means. And so today, we're diving deep into the most profound question in the universe. Who created God if God created the universe? The problem, the infinite regression paradox. Everything we know follows a pattern, cause and effect. A tree doesn't just appear, it grows from a seed, which came from another tree, which itself had a beginning. Stars don't suddenly exist. They form when massive clouds of gas collapse under gravity. Even the universe, according to the Big Bang theory, started from something, a singularity that expanded into everything we see today. But if we keep following this logic, always asking, what caused that? We eventually hit a wall. If everything must have a cause, then what started it all? This is where things get complicated. The moment we ask this question, we enter an infinite loop. If one thing causes another, and that thing was caused by something before it, then where does it stop? If we keep tracing everything backward, there has to be a point where it all begins. But if we can't find that point, then we're left with an endless chain of causes, stretching back forever. This is what philosophers call infinite regression, and it's one of the biggest paradoxes in human thought. Infinite regression is a problem because, logically, an endless chain of causes can't really exist. Imagine lining up an infinite row of dominoes, each one knocking over the next. If there's no first domino to start the chain, then how does the falling ever begin? Without a starting point, nothing should happen at all. And yet, here we are, living in a universe where everything is already in motion. This is where the idea of God comes in. Many religious traditions say that the universe exists because of a creator, God, the force that started everything. But if we apply the same question, then who or what created God? If everything needs a cause, shouldn't God have one too? This question challenges the very core of theology, and different religious perspectives have answered it in different ways. One of the most common responses is that God is uncaused. Unlike everything else, God is believed to exist outside of time, beyond the physical world, not bound by the same rules that govern the universe. God has no beginning, no creator, and no end. In this view, God is the first cause, the original source that set everything in motion. But this explanation raises another problem. Why should we accept that God is the one exception? If we say God doesn't need a cause, why can't we say the same about the universe itself? This debate has been at the center of philosophy for centuries. The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle argued for the idea of an unmoved mover, a being that causes motion without being moved by anything else. His reasoning was simple. If everything in the universe is moving, something had to start that motion. But if we keep looking for what moved the first object, we end up in an infinite regress. To avoid this, Aristotle proposed that there must be one thing that moves everything else, but is not itself moved. This became one of the earliest intellectual arguments for the existence of a divine creator. Later, in the Middle Ages, theologians like Thomas Aquinas expanded on this idea. He argued that if everything in the universe depends on something else for its existence, then there must be one thing that exists by necessity, something that doesn't depend on anything else. He called this necessary being God. But this doesn't fully solve the paradox. If God exists necessarily, why does God get a special exception from the rule that everything needs a cause? Some argue that the answer lies in the difference between contingent and necessary existence. Most things in the universe are contingent. They exist because something else caused them to exist. A tree exists because a seed was planted, and a planet exists because matter clumped together under gravity. But a necessary being, by definition, doesn't depend on anything else. It must exist, no matter what. The argument is that God is that necessary being, the foundation of all reality. This idea is deeply philosophical, but it doesn't sit well with everyone. Some scientists and atheists argue that invoking God as the ultimate cause doesn't answer anything. It just pushes the question back one step. Instead of asking, what caused the universe? We're now asking, what caused God? And if we can accept that something exists without a cause, why not just say the universe itself is that thing? One alternative view is that the universe never needed a beginning. Instead of a first moment in time, some scientists propose that time itself is a loop with no real starting point. If time is infinite, the question of what caused the universe becomes meaningless. There was no before, because time has always existed. Others suggest that our universe is part of a much larger multiverse, where new universes are constantly forming from the remnants of previous ones. In this model, our universe might have been born from another, which came from another, going back endlessly. This sidesteps the problem of a first cause entirely. Another scientific perspective comes from quantum mechanics, which suggests that things can happen without a clear cause. At the quantum level, particles sometimes appear and disappear randomly, without any identifiable reason. Some physicists argue that the entire universe might have emerged from a quantum fluctuation, essentially, a random event that needed no external cause. This idea gained traction when Stephen Hawking and James Hartley proposed the no-boundary model, which suggests that time itself is curved, like the surface of a sphere. Just like you can't find a first point on a globe, there might not be a first moment of time. The universe simply is. But does that mean God is unnecessary? Not necessarily. Some argue that even if the universe emerged from quantum fluctuations, the laws of physics still need an explanation. Where did they come from? Why do they exist in a way that allows something rather than nothing? If there are deeper laws governing reality, then we're still left with the question, who or what created those laws? Others take the debate in a different direction. Instead of trying to prove or disprove God scientifically, they argue that the question itself is flawed. The very idea of causality, one thing leading to another, only makes sense inside time. But if God exists outside of time, then asking, who created God, is like asking, what's north of the North Pole? The question assumes a framework that doesn't apply. This is a challenging idea because our minds are wired to think in terms of beginnings and endings. We live in a world where everything changes, everything moves, everything has a cause. The thought of something existing without a beginning feels unnatural. But if the universe itself came from something beyond our understanding of time, maybe the answer to this mystery isn't something we're capable of grasping. The deeper we go, the more we realize that the question of origins isn't just about science or religion. It's about the way we think. Maybe the real paradox isn't who created God, but why we expect everything to have a cause in the first place. Maybe causality itself is just a rule inside our universe, not a fundamental truth of existence. And if that's the case, then maybe the real answer has been in front of us all along. Some things just are. The science of the beginning. For centuries, humanity has searched for the origin of everything. Ancient myth spoke of gods forging the universe, while modern science points to a cosmic explosion, the Big Bang. But no matter how deep we look, one question refuses to disappear. What started it all? If the universe had a beginning, what came before it? And if God created everything, where did God come from? The deeper we dig, the more unsettling the answers become. Before we explore science's role in this mystery, let's first break down the paradox at the heart of it all, the infinite regression problem. The Big Bang and the something from nothing debate. Right now, the best theory we have for the universe's origin is the Big Bang, the moment when all space, time, and energy exploded into existence from a single point. Before that, there was nothing. Or was there? The problem with nothing is that it's one of the most misleading words in science. When people hear nothing, they imagine an empty void, absolute emptiness. But in physics, nothing isn't truly nothing. It's more like a quantum vacuum, a strange state where particles constantly flicker in and out of existence. Some physicists believe that this vacuum, governed by the laws of quantum mechanics, could have been enough to spark the entire universe. In this view, the universe didn't need a creator. It was simply an inevitable result of the laws of physics. Stephen Hawking was one of the strongest advocates of this idea. He argued that because there is a law like gravity, the universe could and would create itself from nothing. According to his model, time itself was born with the Big Bang, meaning there was no before for a creator to exist in. If time had a starting point, then asking what came before, it would be meaningless, just like asking what's north of the North Pole. But this idea isn't as simple as it sounds. If the universe could create itself, what gave it the ability to do so? Where did the laws of physics come from? It's one thing to say the universe arose from a quantum vacuum, but why does that vacuum exist in the first place? Why do the laws of nature operate with such precise mathematical consistency? John Lennox, a mathematician and philosopher, has argued that Hawking's explanation only shifts the problem rather than solving it. If the universe could create itself, it implies that something can be the cause of its own existence, which doesn't make sense. It's like claiming that a book wrote itself, or that a person can lift themselves into the air by pulling on their shoelaces. Lennox points out that laws do not create things. They merely describe how things behave. Gravity, for instance, explains how objects with mass interact, but it does not create mass itself. The laws of motion describe how planets orbit stars, but they don't create planets or stars. If laws alone could bring something into existence, then why don't we see objects randomly appearing around us all the time? Laws don't have power on their own. They need something to act upon. This brings us to a bigger question. If quantum mechanics allows universes to appear from a vacuum, why do the rules of quantum mechanics exist? If gravity allows a universe to form, why does gravity exist? Some argue that these laws simply are, that they don't require an explanation. But that response is no different from saying, God just is. It's a statement, not an answer. When scientists propose that a quantum fluctuation caused the universe, they are assuming that the deeper reality of existence is mathematical, that numbers and equations hold some kind of ultimate power. But why should numbers govern the universe at all? Why do equations describe reality so perfectly? And even if we accept that physics allowed the universe to form, there's another problem: fine-tuning. The universe isn't just any random explosion of matter and energy. The laws that shape it are balanced with mind-blowing precision. If the force of gravity had been slightly stronger or weaker, stars wouldn't have formed properly. If the charge of the electron had been slightly different, chemistry as we know it wouldn't work. If the rate of cosmic expansion had been off by even the tiniest fraction, the universe would have either collapsed in on itself or expanded too fast for galaxies to form. These values are so precise that some physicists compare it to throwing a dart from space and hitting a bullseye the size of an atom on Earth. Could this kind of precision really be the result of chance, or does it point to something deeper? This is where the debate turns philosophical. If the universe had a beginning and the laws of physics had to come from somewhere, does that mean there was a mind behind it all? Some argue that the fine-tuning of the universe suggests design, that these perfect conditions are not just a lucky accident. But others argue that we might be missing something. Maybe our universe is just one of many, a tiny part of a vast multiverse. If countless universes exist, all with different laws and constants, then it's not surprising that at least one of them ended up being life-friendly. It's like rolling the dice an infinite number of times. Eventually, you'll get a perfect result. But there's a catch. The multiverse idea doesn't solve the problem, it just pushes it back. If there are infinite universes, where did the multiverse itself come from? What laws govern it? Why does it exist at all? The question never really goes away. It just shifts to a larger scale. Some scientists propose that the universe is part of an eternal cycle, constantly expanding and collapsing in a never-ending loop. If that's true, then maybe the universe has always existed in some form. But even this idea has issues. If the universe has been reborn infinitely, why did it reach this exact state now? What caused the first cycle? And if it's truly infinite, why does time seem to move in one direction? Every explanation seems to lead to more questions. If we say the universe came from a quantum fluctuation, we must ask why quantum fluctuations exist. If we say the laws of physics allowed the universe to form, we must ask where those laws came from. If we suggest a multiverse, we must ask what created the multiverse. And if we say the universe is eternal, we must ask how time and space can exist without a beginning. The human mind is wired to think in terms of cause and effect, but when we reach the fundamental level of reality, the normal rules break down. Maybe we are asking the wrong questions. Maybe the human brain isn't capable of fully grasping the nature of existence. This is where science and philosophy collide. Some scientists argue that we should stop asking why and just accept that the universe exists because it exists. But that's not a very satisfying answer. The drive to seek explanations is at the heart of both science and human curiosity. If we stopped questioning the origins of the universe, we would be turning away from the very thing that makes us intelligent beings. On the other hand, if we accept that some things may be beyond human understanding, we must also accept that we might never have a final answer. The universe does not owe us an explanation, and reality is not required to fit within the limits of human logic. So, if physics can't fully explain why the universe exists, does that mean God is the answer? Not necessarily. While the idea of a creator provides a stopping point, an ultimate cause, it also raises its own questions. If God created the universe, then who created God? If God is eternal and uncaused, why can't the universe be eternal and uncaused? If we say God is beyond time and space, then how can we even define what that means? The debate comes full circle. In the end, the question of why the universe exists is one of the deepest mysteries of all. Whether we look to science, philosophy, or theology, every answer leads to more questions. Maybe the real mystery isn't how the universe came from nothing, but why we can't stop asking. The fine-tuning problem, coincidence or design. The universe isn't just a chaotic explosion of matter. It's balanced on a razor's edge. Everything, from the pull of gravity to the charge of an electron, exists within an incredibly narrow range that allows galaxies, stars, planets, and ultimately, life to exist. If any of these values were even slightly different, the universe as we know it wouldn't just be different. It would be impossible. Too much gravity, and everything collapses in on itself before stars can form. Too little, and matter drifts apart, never clumping into galaxies. Even the tiniest shift in the strong nuclear force, the glue that holds atomic nuclei together, would mean no atoms, no chemistry, no life. It's a cosmic puzzle, one that forces us to ask, is this all an incredible accident, or was the universe fine-tuned on purpose? Physicists call this the fine-tuning problem, and it's one of the biggest mysteries in science. The numbers that govern reality seem almost suspiciously perfect. The cosmological constant, which controls the rate of the universe's expansion, is fine-tuned to 1 part in 10 to the power of 120, a level of precision so absurd that it defies comprehension. The odds of hitting this number by chance are like picking a single specific atom out of the entire observable universe. Then there's the mass of the Higgs boson, a particle responsible for giving other particles mass. If it were slightly heavier or lighter, the delicate balance of forces in the universe would collapse, making complex structures impossible. Even the ratio of electrons to protons, which determines the universe's overall electrical neutrality, is so precise that a deviation of just 1 part in 10 to the 37th would prevent the formation of galaxies. Paul Davies, a physicist and cosmologist, sees this precision as more than just a lucky break. He suggests that the universe's laws seem too perfect to be random, arguing that such fine-tuning hints at some kind of intelligence setting the rules. To him, the existence of such specific, life-permitting conditions points to purpose rather than chance. The fact that the universe seems so precisely calibrated for the emergence of complexity and consciousness suggests, at least to some, that it was designed that way. This is one of the most powerful arguments for the existence of a creator. If we accept that something had to fine-tune the universe, then that something, whatever it may be, would have to exist outside of space and time, beyond the universe itself. But not everyone is convinced. Some scientists argue that the fine-tuning problem is misleading. They claim it's like marveling at how perfectly suited Earth is for human life, while ignoring the fact that we evolved to fit Earth, not the other way around. Maybe we're looking at fine-tuning from the wrong perspective. What if the universe isn't designed for life, but rather, life just happened to emerge in one of the universes where the conditions happen to be right? Enter the multiverse theory, the idea that our universe isn't the only one. According to this theory, there could be an infinite number of universes, each with different laws of physics. Some might collapse instantly, some might never form stars, and some might be even more life-friendly than our own. We just happen to live in the one where the numbers line up. If the multiverse exists, then fine-tuning isn't a mystery. It's just statistics. In an infinite set of possibilities, even the most unlikely scenario will occur somewhere. We wouldn't need a designer. We would just be the lucky winners of a cosmic lottery. One version of this idea comes from string theory, which suggests that different universes could exist in extra dimensions, each with its own physical laws. Another possibility is eternal inflation, a model in which new universes are constantly being created in an ever-expanding multiverse. Each one emerges with different properties, meaning that eventually some will have the right conditions for life. If this is true, then the question shifts from why is our universe fine-tuned to why wouldn't at least one universe be fine-tuned? But the multiverse idea has its own problems. The biggest one, we have no direct evidence that it exists. Unlike black holes or the Big Bang, which have observable effects we can measure, the multiverse is entirely theoretical. If other universes exist outside our own, we might never be able to detect them. This makes some physicists uneasy, because it means the multiverse is not testable, which is a major issue in science. If something can't be tested or observed, how can we prove it's real? Some argue that invoking the multiverse to explain fine-tuning is just replacing one mystery with another. Instead of saying God did it, we're saying an infinite number of unseen universes did it. But in both cases, we're left with something that we can't currently verify. There's also a deeper problem. If we accept the idea of infinite universes, then we're also accepting that every possible universe exists somewhere. That means there could be a universe where everything is exactly the same as ours, except you have blue hair, or one where dinosaurs never went extinct, or even one where the laws of physics allow for magic. At what point does the multiverse theory stop being a scientific explanation and start sounding more like science fiction? Some physicists, like Roger Penrose, go even further. He points out that even if a multiverse exists, that still doesn't explain why the laws of physics are the way they are. If there are infinite universes, why do they follow mathematical rules at all? Why do things behave in predictable ways instead of being pure chaos? The existence of multiple universes wouldn't explain why the fundamental constants, like the speed of light or the charge of an electron, exist in the first place. In other words, even if the multiverse is real, it just pushes the question back rather than answering it. So, where does that leave us? The fine-tuning problem forces us to confront one of the deepest questions in physics. Is the universe a product of design, or is it just one possibility out of infinite realities? If the universe is fine-tuned by an intelligent creator, then that means something existed before the universe, something powerful enough to set the laws of physics themselves. If the multiverse exists, then we might just be in the right place at the right time, one lucky reality out of countless failures. But in both cases, we still don't know why anything exists at all. Some scientists believe that one day we'll discover a deeper law of physics that explains everything, something that makes the fine-tuning problem disappear. Others think we'll never know for sure. Either way, the fact remains, the universe didn't have to be the way it is. Yet somehow it is. And whether that's the result of pure chance, an infinite multiverse, or the hand of a creator remains one of the greatest mysteries of all time. Could the universe be eternal? If God can exist without a cause, why can't the universe itself be the thing that has always existed? This question challenges one of the biggest assumptions in both science and philosophy, that everything must have a beginning. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if the universe never truly began, but has always existed in one form or another? This idea, known as the eternal universe hypothesis, has fascinated scientists, philosophers, and theologians for centuries. It suggests that the cosmos did not come from nothing, nor was it created by a divine being. It simply is. But how could that be possible? And if true, what would it mean for our understanding of reality? One possibility is that the universe is cyclical, constantly going through an infinite loop of birth, death, and rebirth. Instead of having one big bang that started everything, this theory suggests that there have been countless big bangs before it, and that there will be countless more after. The universe expands, then eventually slows down, collapses back in on itself, and then explodes outward again in another big bang. This idea, known as the Big Bounce theory, challenges the common belief that the universe started from a single point and will eventually end in either heat death or a crushing collapse. If true, it means there was no true beginning, because there has always been a universe in some form, cycling through endless ages. Some physicists argue that this model fits naturally with the laws of physics. Gravity, energy, and motion all obey strict rules, rules that wouldn't necessarily stop working just because time moves forward. If a collapsing universe leads to a new expansion, then the laws of physics could remain unchanged across cycles. The idea of a never-ending sequence of universes removes the need for an initial cause because there never was a singular starting point. But is this idea actually supported by evidence? Some scientists think so. Cosmic microwave background radiation, the afterglow of the Big Bang, contains tiny irregularities that some physicists argue could be remnants of a previous cycle. While not definitive proof, it opens the door to the possibility that our universe is just one phase in an endless cosmic rhythm. Others, however, believe that if the universe truly were cyclical, we should see much clearer evidence of previous bounces imprinted in the fabric of space-time. An even more mind-bending idea is that time itself might not be real, at least not in the way we usually think of it. Humans experience time as a linear sequence: past, present, future. But what if this is just an illusion created by the way our brains process the world? Some theories in physics suggest that time is not a fundamental feature of the universe, but a byproduct of how we observe changes in matter and energy. In this view, asking what happened before the universe is like asking what's north of the North Pole. It's a question that doesn't make sense because before only exists inside time, not outside of it. Stephen Hawking explored this idea with his no-boundary proposal, which suggests that asking what came before the Big Bang is meaningless because time itself is part of the universe, not something that exists independently. In this model, the universe didn't begin in a singularity, but gradually transitioned from a different state, similar to how Earth's North Pole isn't a sharp edge where the planet stops, but simply a point where direction loses meaning. If this is true, the need for a first cause disappears, because there was never a true beginning, just a different phase of existence. Quantum mechanics also adds to the mystery. At the smallest scales of reality, particles pop in and out of existence without any clear cause. If this randomness is part of the fundamental nature of reality, then perhaps the universe itself didn't need a cause to begin with. The problem is, our everyday experience tells us that everything must have a cause. But quantum physics suggests that at the deepest levels of existence, causality might not work the way we expect. If the rules of cause and effect break down at the quantum scale, could the same apply to the entire universe? Could the universe have simply emerged from a quantum fluctuation without any need for an external creator? Some scientists argue that even if the universe had a beginning, that doesn't necessarily mean it had to be created by something. When water turns to ice, there's a clear transition, but we don't say something caused the ice in the way we think of a creator making a universe. Instead, the ice forms naturally because of the conditions present. Could the universe be the same, just a natural transition from one state to another? If that's the case, then asking who created the universe might be the wrong question. But not everyone agrees. Some physicists, like Roger Penrose, believe that while cyclical models and quantum fluctuations are interesting ideas, they don't fully solve the problem of the universe's existence. Even if the universe cycles forever, we're still left wondering, why does anything exist at all? What set the laws of physics in place to allow for cycles or fluctuations in the first place? These questions push us back toward the idea of an ultimate cause, whether we call it God, a deeper law of nature, or something else entirely. Another challenge to the idea of an eternal universe is entropy. The second law of thermodynamics states that over time, the universe should become more disordered, eventually reaching a state of maximum entropy where no useful energy remains. If the universe had truly existed forever, then it should have already reached this lifeless state. The fact that it hasn't suggests that it must have had a beginning, a moment when entropy was reset, rather than an infinite past stretching forever. This is a major argument in favor of the idea that the universe must have had a starting point, whether through the Big Bang or something else. So where does this leave us? The question of whether the universe is eternal is still open, and there's no definitive proof either way. Science offers fascinating possibilities: cyclical universes, quantum randomness, time as an illusion, but none of these fully eliminate the deeper mystery of why anything exists at all. If God can be eternal, why not the universe? And if the universe has always existed in some form, does that mean God isn't necessary? Or does it just mean we don't yet understand reality deeply enough to answer the question? Who created God? For centuries, philosophers and theologians have debated the idea that not everything requires a cause. Some things might simply exist, timeless, uncreated, and fundamental. This leads to the concept of a necessary being, something that exists by its very nature, without an external force bringing it into existence. In most religious traditions, this necessary being is identified as God, the ultimate uncaused cause. If everything else needs a reason to exist, then there must be something at the very start of it all that doesn't, a self-existent force that underpins everything. This idea makes logical sense in many ways. If we assume that every effect must have a cause, then an infinite chain of causes cannot go backward forever. At some point, there must be something that is outside of this chain, something that simply is. This is where God enters the discussion, not as another link in the chain, but as the foundation itself. The argument suggests that without an uncaused cause, we are left with an endless loop of causes with no ultimate explanation. God, in this view, is the thing that stops the loop. But this raises a difficult question. If something can exist without being caused, why does that something have to be God? Why not the universe itself? If the whole reason for believing in an uncaused cause is to avoid infinite regression, then wouldn't it make sense to consider that maybe the universe is what has always existed? Some physicists and cosmologists argue that the universe, or at least the fundamental laws governing it, might be eternal. If the universe has no beginning, it doesn't require a creator. For a long time, the dominant view in science was that the cosmos was eternal and unchanging. This was the steady-state theory, which suggested that the universe had always existed in the same form, with matter being continuously created as the universe expanded. However, this idea was largely replaced by the Big Bang theory, which proposed that the universe had a definite beginning, a moment when time, space, and energy all came into existence. If the universe had a beginning, it becomes difficult to argue that it is eternal. But even if the Big Bang was the start of our universe, does that necessarily mean it was the start of everything? Some theories suggest that the Big Bang was not a singular event, but part of a never-ending cycle. In this model, the universe expands, reaches a certain point, and then collapses in on itself, leading to another Big Bang. This cycle could have been repeating forever, meaning the universe didn't have a single beginning, but has always existed in different forms. If this is true, then the question of what caused the universe might be unnecessary. It would be like asking what caused a circle to exist. There's no starting point. It just continues. Other scientists propose the idea of the multiverse, where our universe is just one of many, constantly being formed through different mechanisms. In this view, the Big Bang is simply the birth of our specific universe, but reality itself, the grand multiverse, has always been there in some form. This shifts the discussion entirely. If the universe or multiverse has no beginning, then it doesn't need a creator. The idea of a first cause becomes unnecessary because there was never a first event. This creates an enormous challenge for traditional religious perspectives. If the universe is eternal or self-sustaining, then the reasoning used to prove God's necessity collapses. The argument that everything must have a cause no longer works because we could just say that the cosmos itself is the uncaused thing. If one eternal thing must exist, why should it be a supernatural deity rather than the physical universe? This idea has gained popularity among scientists who argue that the universe, despite its complexity, does not require a divine intelligence behind it. Stephen Hawking famously stated that the laws of physics alone could explain the emergence of the universe, removing the need for a creator. But this argument is not without problems. Even if the universe is eternal, there is still the question of why the laws of physics exist in the first place. The laws of nature appear to be finely tuned to allow for the existence of complex structures, from galaxies to life itself. This has led some scientists and philosophers to argue that the universe still requires an explanation beyond itself. Why do the laws of physics have the values they do? Could they have been different? And if so, what determined them? If there is a deeper reality beyond the universe, could that be what we call God? Some thinkers argue that the very nature of the universe suggests an underlying intelligence. The fine-tuning problem, the fact that physical constants are set so precisely that even the smallest variation would make life impossible, raises the question of whether this is all just a cosmic accident or the result of an intentional design. Some see this as evidence of a creator, while others propose that the multiverse might provide an alternative explanation. If there are infinite universes, then at least one of them would randomly have the right conditions for life. But even this leaves open the question of what mechanism generates these universes and why reality operates the way it does. At its core, this debate comes down to a fundamental question: can existence explain itself? If we demand that God must be the necessary uncaused being, then we must ask why that logic cannot apply to the universe instead. If we claim that only something beyond time and space can be uncaused, we have to explain why the universe itself couldn't fit that description. And if we argue that reality is finely tuned for life, we must consider whether that fine-tuning is a natural process or the product of an intelligent mind. Some philosophers push back against the idea of the universe as an uncaused cause by pointing out that everything we observe within the universe operates under cause and effect relationships. Stars form from collapsing gas clouds. Planets emerge from the leftover material of stars. Life develops through chemical and biological processes. Everything we see follows the principle that things don't just exist without a cause. If that is true within the universe, why would the universe itself be an exception? If nothing within the universe is uncaused, how can the universe as a whole be? This is where the idea of God as the uncaused cause still holds weight for many. If there must be an ultimate explanation, something that provides the foundation for all of reality, it must be something beyond the physical world. A necessary being, one that is outside of time, space, and material reality, could explain why there is something rather than nothing. But this reasoning is not universally accepted. Some argue that invoking God as the ultimate explanation doesn't actually solve the problem, it just moves it one step back. If God is the answer to what caused the universe, then the next question is, what caused God? The standard response is that God is not caused. God is eternal and exists outside of time. But critics argue that this is just an assertion without proof. If we are willing to accept that something can exist without a cause, why assume that it must be an intelligent deity rather than the universe itself? The debate over the uncaused cause remains one of the deepest mysteries in philosophy and science. Whether God is the necessary being or the universe itself remains an open question. Some believe that the search for a first cause is meaningless because existence simply is, without needing an explanation. Others argue that reason and logic demand an ultimate answer, and that answer must be something beyond the physical world. But no matter which perspective we take, one thing is certain: the question of where everything came from is one that will continue to challenge human understanding for as long as we exist. A different perspective: what if God is something else entirely? In the 1600s, philosopher Baruch Spinoza had a radical idea. Maybe God isn't a being at all. Maybe God is the universe. Everything, the galaxies, the laws of physics, even our own thoughts, is God. This wasn't just a new way of thinking about God. It completely flipped the entire debate on its head. If God isn't a separate, conscious entity, but instead is the sum total of everything that exists, then the question, who created God, doesn't even make sense, because you can't create reality itself. God isn't something outside the universe looking down upon it. God is the universe, and everything in it. This idea is called pantheism, and it removes the traditional notion of a divine creator sitting above creation. Instead, it suggests that everything we experience, space, time, matter, energy, is divine in its own way. There's no separation between creator and creation because they are one and the same. There is no moment when God decided to create the universe because, according to Spinoza, the universe was never created in the way we imagine. It simply is, and it always has been. This challenges not only religious beliefs, but also how we think about existence itself. If God is reality, then there is no external force governing the universe, only the natural laws that shape everything we see. Albert Einstein was deeply influenced by this idea. He once said, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the orderly harmony of what exists." To Einstein, God wasn't a personal being who answered prayers or intervened in human affairs. Instead, God was the deep, underlying structure of the cosmos, the precise mathematical laws that make the universe function. For Einstein, the very fact that the universe follows elegant, predictable rules was enough to inspire a sense of awe, a kind of spiritual reverence for reality itself. The laws of gravity, the way light moves, the way atoms interact, these weren't designed by a conscious creator, but were simply the way the universe naturally expressed itself. This view blurred the line between science and spirituality, presenting a universe that was both mechanistic and mysteriously profound. But if God is just the universe, then what does that mean for concepts like consciousness, purpose, and design? Most religious traditions describe God as an intelligent being, someone who can think, decide, and create with intention. If God is the universe, does that mean the universe itself has no guiding intelligence? No purpose? Is everything just an accident? Spinoza would argue that asking these questions assumes a human perspective that doesn't necessarily apply to reality. Just because we think in terms of purpose and intention doesn't mean the universe operates that way. The sun doesn't rise in the morning for our benefit. It just follows the laws of physics. Trees don't grow so that we can have shade. They simply grow because that's what their biological processes dictate. Everything in nature follows its own inherent rules without needing a conscious mind behind it. This is a difficult idea for many people to accept. We are naturally wired to look for meaning in everything. We want to believe that things happen for a reason, that there is some kind of order guiding events, that our existence isn't just a random accident. Spinoza's philosophy doesn't deny that the universe is ordered. It just removes the idea that this order comes from a thinking, decision-making God. Instead, the structure of reality emerges from the fundamental laws of nature themselves. The universe isn't being guided by anything. It simply unfolds according to the principles embedded within it. In this sense, God isn't a being that chooses what happens. God is the very nature of what happens. One of the most controversial aspects of Spinoza's philosophy was that it rejected traditional religious views of prayer, miracles, and divine intervention. If God isn't a separate being, then there's no one to pray to. There's no one watching over human affairs, rewarding the good and punishing the wicked. There are no divine miracles that break the laws of physics because the laws of physics are God, and they cannot be violated. This idea was so radical in Spinoza's time that he was excommunicated from the Jewish community in Amsterdam. His ideas were seen as dangerous, even heretical, because they took away the personal connection people felt with God. Religion, for many, is not just about explaining the universe. It's about feeling seen, heard, and protected. Spinoza's view of God offered none of that. Yet, despite rejecting the traditional idea of a personal God, Spinoza's philosophy wasn't entirely cold or empty. In fact, he saw a deep kind of spirituality in understanding reality as it truly is. He believed that the more we understand the universe, the closer we come to understanding God, not as a person, but as the fundamental nature of existence. To Spinoza, knowledge itself was sacred. The more we learn about the laws of nature, the more we appreciate the intricate, interconnected system that makes up reality. He believed that true happiness and peace come not from asking the universe for favors, but from aligning ourselves with its natural order. Accepting the world as it is, not as we wish it to be, was, in his view, the highest form of wisdom. This is where Spinoza's philosophy connects deeply with modern science. Today, physicists study the universe in ways that Spinoza never could have imagined. They uncover the secrets of quantum mechanics, black holes, and the origins of space-time itself. And yet, at its core, modern physics still echoes Spinoza's belief that the universe operates according to laws that are simply there, fundamental and unchanging. Some scientists, like the late Carl Sagan, embraced a version of this philosophy, seeing science as a way to experience the divine, not through worship, but through discovery. Sagan once said, "The cosmos is within us." We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself. This idea of the universe being deeply interconnected, of humans being a direct expression of cosmic processes, is deeply Spinozan in spirit. But not everyone agrees with Spinoza's view. Some argue that removing the idea of a conscious, personal God strips life of meaning. If the universe doesn't care about us, then what's the point of anything? Others argue that even if the universe follows strict physical laws, that doesn't mean those laws weren't designed by something greater. Even Einstein, despite his admiration for Spinoza, sometimes hinted at a deeper mystery behind the laws of nature. He once said, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." Why should the universe be structured in a way that makes sense? Why should it follow precise mathematical rules? Some see this as evidence of a higher intelligence, something that set the laws of physics in motion, even if it doesn't intervene in human affairs. This brings us back to the original question: who created God? If Spinoza was right, that question is meaningless. God was never created. God is existence itself. But if Spinoza was wrong, then we are still left with a profound mystery. If the universe and its laws had a beginning, what set them into motion? If we reject the idea of a personal creator, are we simply replacing one mystery with another? Ultimately, Spinoza's philosophy doesn't give us easy answers. It challenges us to think differently, not just about God, but about everything. It forces us to ask whether we need a creator at all, or if existence itself is the only thing that has ever truly been. Whether we call it God, the universe, or simply reality, the fact remains: we are here. And perhaps understanding that is the closest we will ever come to understanding the divine. Final twist: is God just a human idea? What if the idea of God is less about the universe and more about us? Maybe the reason we keep asking who created God isn't because we expect an answer, but because we need one. Since the beginning of human civilization, people have looked up at the sky and seen patterns, meaning, and intention. The stars weren't just lights, they were gods watching over them. The sun didn't just rise, it was pulled by a divine force. The wind, the rain, the seasons. Everything had a reason, a purpose, a mind behind it. The human brain is wired for patterns. It's what kept our ancestors alive, recognizing footprints in the dirt as signs of danger, spotting movement in the trees, connecting scattered dots into something that made sense. But this pattern-seeking ability didn't stop at survival. It extended to everything, including the mysteries of existence. Why are we here? Why does anything exist? Where did it all come from? In the absence of clear answers, we did what we've always done. We created a pattern, a story. And so, gods were born. Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, believed that God wasn't necessarily a real entity, but rather an archetype, a universal image that exists in the collective human mind. Every culture, no matter how isolated, has created gods, spirits, or higher beings. This suggests that belief in God isn't just taught, it's something deeply ingrained in the human psyche. Whether it's the Greek gods on Mount Olympus, the Hindu pantheon, the Christian deity, or even modern ideas of the universe having an inherent intelligence, they all follow the same basic structure, an unseen force that gives order to chaos. Jung saw these beliefs as reflections of something deeper: our need to make sense of the world, our fear of uncertainty, and our desire for guidance. The idea of an all-powerful, all-knowing God provides structure. It gives people comfort in suffering, purpose in life, and hope beyond death. Without it, we are left in a universe that is cold, indifferent, and without meaning. For many, that's a terrifying thought. The concept of God, then, may not have emerged from discovery, but from necessity. But does that mean God isn't real? Not necessarily. Just because something exists in the mind doesn't mean it doesn't exist in reality. Humans have an innate understanding of love, beauty, and justice. Yet none of these things can be weighed, measured, or proven to exist in a physical sense. They are concepts, and yet they shape the world in profound ways. God in this view could be similar, not a person, not an external creator, but a principle that has always existed, taking different forms depending on how humans understand it. At the same time, skeptics argue that the persistence of an idea doesn't prove its truth. After all, for thousands of years, people believed the earth was the center of the universe, that illnesses were caused by evil spirits, and that sacrificing animals, or even humans, could influence the gods. Just because something is widely believed doesn't mean it reflects reality. Instead, it may just reveal something about human psychology, our tendency to fill in the blanks with explanations that make us feel safe. Consider this. If we had never evolved the ability to think about the future, to worry about death, or to seek patterns in randomness, would we have ever created gods at all? If we had been born into a world where every answer was immediately available, where there were no unknowns, no mysteries, no fears, would religion even exist? If every event had a clear, natural explanation, would we have ever looked beyond nature for a cause? The answer to these questions suggests that belief in God, or at least the idea of God, comes from within us, rather than from something external. The ancient Egyptians worshipped the sun because it gave them life. The Norse believed in gods of thunder and war because their world was harsh and violent. Early humans saw spirits in the forests, rivers, and mountains because their survival depended on understanding and respecting nature. Every civilization, in every time, has crafted gods that reflect their reality. This isn't proof that gods don't exist. It simply means that our ideas of them are shaped by our environment, our needs, and our fears. Even in modern times, as science explains more and more about the universe, belief in higher powers persists. But it's evolving. Many people no longer imagine God as a bearded man in the sky, but as a force of nature, a form of consciousness, or even the universe itself. Albert Einstein, for example, rejected the idea of a personal God who intervenes in human affairs. But he did believe in a kind of divine intelligence, what he called Spinoza's God, the harmony of the natural world. Carl Sagan, too, saw wonder in the cosmos, not in a supernatural sense, but in the beauty and complexity of the universe itself. This shift raises an interesting question. Are we discovering a truer version of God as our understanding of the universe deepens? Or are we simply adjusting our definition of God to fit what we already know? Every time science pushes the boundaries of what we understand, God seems to shift just beyond reach. When we didn't understand lightning, we said Zeus controlled it. When we didn't understand disease, we blamed spirits. As our knowledge grows, the gaps where we once placed God shrink. But does that mean God isn't real? Or is God simply something we will never fully grasp, no matter how much we learn? Another possibility is that our concept of God is not just an external search, but an internal one. The gods we create may not reflect the cosmos, but our own inner worlds. The idea of an all-seeing, all-knowing being could be a projection of our own conscience. The concept of divine punishment and reward mirrors our instinct for justice. Heaven and hell reflect our deepest hopes and fears about what happens after death. Even the idea of an eternal, unchanging God may come from our longing for stability in a chaotic, ever-changing universe. If this is true, then our search for God is really a search for ourselves. And maybe that's why the question, who created God, feels so impossible to answer. We assume that God must be like us, something that exists, something that has a beginning, something that was made. But what if God, if it exists at all, isn't a thing in the way we understand things? What if the ultimate reality behind existence is something we can't comprehend? In the end, whether God is real, imagined, or something in between, the fact remains. Humans will always search for meaning. We will always ask why. And as long as we keep asking, God, whatever form that takes, will always be part of the equation. After all this, centuries of science, philosophy, and religion, where do we actually stand? Have we truly answered anything? or just opened more doors to even deeper mysteries? Let's break it down. The universe. Had a beginning, or did it? Everything we see, every planet, star, and galaxy, had an origin. The Big Bang Theory tells us that all of space and time expanded from a single, infinitely small point. Before that, there was nothing. Or so we think. Some scientists argue that the universe could have created itself, that quantum physics allows something to come from nothing. Stephen Hawking believed that gravity alone could explain the existence of the universe, that it just emerged naturally without needing a creator. But here's the problem. Where did those laws come from? The laws of physics don't explain themselves. They just are. If we accept that gravity, quantum mechanics, or some deeper law created the universe, aren't we just replacing God with another unexplained mystery? And if the universe can exist without a cause, then why do we assume God must have a cause? This is where the paradox of infinite regression traps us. If everything must have a cause, then something must have caused the universe. If that thing is God, then what caused God? If God needs no cause, then why can't the universe itself be uncaused? Are we chasing a question that has no answer? Or are we simply not asking the right question? Is God real, or just a human creation? For thousands of years, humans have believed in gods. Every civilization, from ancient Egypt to modern religions, has worshipped a higher power. But why? Psychologists like Carl Jung suggest that God is an idea, not a being, a reflection of our need for purpose. Maybe humans create gods to explain the unexplainable, to bring order to chaos, to find comfort in the vastness of the unknown. But if we invented the idea of God, why does the universe feel designed? The fine-tuning problem is one of the strongest arguments for a creator. The universe's physical laws, the force of gravity, the charge of an electron, the expansion rate of space, are so precisely balanced that even the smallest change would make life impossible. Coincidence? Or something more? Some scientists argue that we just got lucky, that there are infinite universes, and we just happen to live in the one where everything works. But even if that's true, where did the multiverse come from? No matter how deep we dig, we always end up at the same question. What started it all? The ultimate paradox. A God beyond logic? There's another possibility, and it's the strangest one yet. What if we simply can't understand the truth? Think about it. A cat will never understand algebra. A fish will never grasp quantum mechanics. Their minds aren't built for it. What if our minds aren't built to understand reality? We think in terms of time, before and after, cause and effect. But what if time itself is an illusion? Modern physics suggests that time didn't exist before the Big Bang. If that's true, then asking, what came before the universe, might be as meaningless as asking, what's north of the North Pole? And if time had a beginning, so did causality. Maybe God doesn't need a creator because God exists outside of time, where cause and effect don't work the way we think. Maybe the question, who created God, only makes sense inside time, and God, by definition, exists outside of it. But if we accept that, then we have to ask, did God create the universe? Or, did the universe create God? What if we're thinking about this completely backwards? Could the universe be God? Some philosophers suggest that God isn't a being, but reality itself. Baruch Spinoza, a 17th century thinker, believed that God and the universe are the same thing, that the laws of nature, the fabric of reality, the very existence of space and time, that's God. Not a separate creator, but the universe itself, unfolding like a cosmic machine. Einstein admired this idea. He once said, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the orderly harmony of what exists, not in a God who concerns himself with the fates and actions of human beings." It's a radical thought. Maybe we've been picturing God all wrong. Maybe God isn't a who, but a what. A fundamental force, the essence of existence. But if that's the case, does that mean the universe created itself? And if it did, how? The final mystery. What came first? No matter where we turn, we keep circling the same puzzle. If everything must have a cause, what caused God? If God is eternal, why can't the universe be eternal too? If God is just reality itself, does that mean there's no conscious creator? And if God is a human idea, does that mean we'll always be searching for something bigger than ourselves? Maybe we're not meant to have the answer. Maybe the real mystery isn't who created God, but why we keep looking for one. And yet, there's one question left. Even if we never find out if God is real, even if we never understand if God needs a creator, there's one thing we might still be able to answer. How did the universe begin? Find out in the next video.